Okay. So, see, at this point, I would normally try to trick you into, like, talking about the album and being like, here's a clever turn of phrase. But, I don't know, man. I feel like I want to try something else, man. You want to know why?
Why?
Because, like, with all, like, the different changes that I've been going on with my life, like, I go outside, and it's like I've never seen the sky this color before, and it's like I'm noticing everything a little bit more.
You lying son of a bitch.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on this side of the Mississippi, hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who shared the same middle name. I'm the one, the only, the forever changing up his game, Ryan James Kearns.
Can we really consider that you changing up your game? I'm not so sure if we can call it that. And I am the often disputed, always known Matthew James Durzik.
And this podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And if this is your very first time listening to me and Matt talk about music and what our thoughts about that music are, first of all, welcome. Second of all, what we do here is that me and Matt take turns every week, essentially just picking an album that we're going to dissect track by track. We can go as hard in the paint as we want, or we could go as, like, short in the paint as we want. I feel like lately, though, we've been kind of going around the same kind of pace. I still am, like, taken back by our Pixies episode where we had legitimately like an under 30-minute album, and we spent essentially an hour and a half talking about it.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a bit on the excessive side. But yeah, sometimes a song may need to take a little bit more. You think I was just, right before we started recording, I was watching a countdown of the songs that the Beach Boys played most in their career. And even then, like, all those songs, like, they did, songs like California Girls or Good Vibrations, like, they were only 3 minutes long tops, but you could easily talk about them. Like, Good Vibrations alone, you could probably talk about for, like, an hour, or even God only knows, like, just the intricacies that go into songs like that. So sometimes, yeah, they need to, be discussed at length. Other times, go back to our Mumford and Sons episode for an example. You don't have to talk about it that much.
Yeah, like some of the stuff is surface level, and like even if I can, at the risk of going off on a tangent here, shortly before I hopped on the call with you here today, I was listening to a podcast called The First Ever Podcast, hosted by Jeremy Boehm of Touche More fame. And he was interviewing a guest, and she was talking about, like, getting into the Pixies and, like, how she basically kind of had to force herself to like it because, like, outside of, like, the jingly, like, singles that they have out there, like, the deep cuts, like, she was just like, I don't know how anyone can like this. This is completely insane to me, like, this kind of music that's being presented to me. And then, like, after a while, it just clicked. So, like, it's a fun episode. So if you're listening to this episode right now, you want to listen to that episode, I mean, we discussed Surfer Rosa. It was a good time. But last week, we covered a band called Hot Mulligan, and the album was Why Would I Watch? That episode was a good time. It was very nice for me as a fan of the band to take the time to dissect the album, especially on the lyrically front. But yeah, this week it was Matt's turn to pick. Matt, what do you have for us?
This week I have the 2021, I believe, release by one Adele. And the album is called 30 because she released it and recorded it when she was 30. Now, this is the fourth studio album by Adele, fourth numerically titled one, following 19, 21, and 25, Hut Hut Hike. And this, to be honest with you, like, there's two ways I could tell you how I came across this album, because on the one hand, I have been very familiar with Adele, having listened to both 21 and 25 on several occasions, and to me, she is one of the best, if not the best singer of our generation as far as, just a pure talent level. She is, I think, tops. The other side of it is a lot simpler and very pure to this show, which is last week, I finally decided, since summer's coming, I'm decided to cut the hair down and get a haircut. And so I did. And after I did, I went to a nearby consignment shop where they had hundreds of CDs, but I only had a couple bucks in my pocket, so I sorted through and I found 30 by Adele. And I figured, you know what? For a new release on CD, not bad. I'll pick it up, give it a listen. Hey, listen to this. So that's what I did, and as soon as I heard it for the first time, I was like, oh, I have thoughts. So now, spoiler alert, the reason I was able to come up with this album as our choice as well is that, as has been custom lately, we've been using the last part of the episode to give each other options, and recently it had been announced that another album that was in consideration, Lauryn Hill's The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, was voted number 1 on Apple Music's charts. So that was the other option last week. So that was like, oh, okay, 2 R&B albums by female artists. Okay, let's go with that. So you chose 30, and that's why we're talking about 30.
It seems pretty legit. I mean, like, I like the story there where you were like, hey, I know this artist, and why not give this CD a try and like experiencing that? So it's a nice little backstory, and like I like those moments where you could find like a random CD or like album like that, and it connects with you for better for worse. I don't know what your opinions are of this album. We've not talked about it yet. So a little bit about my background with Adele, and then if you want to riff on some stuff, you can take your turn, and then we can dive right into the album. So she really broke onto the scene with her album 21 with the song Rolling in the Deep, and it was released in my college days, and for lack of a better description of myself, I was pretty much a hater, in terms of like, oh, look at me, I'm so cool, like, I think Adele is like not the best singer in our generation. I think Florence and her Machines are a better representation of vocal talent. I'm gonna be honest with you, like, after listening to this album, getting slightly reacquainted with Adele through 30 a little bit more thoroughly, and I actually kind of doubled back and listened to 21. I've since have made peace with that fact and realized that I was a hater, and I'm not so much of a hater nowadays. So that's a little blurb about my history with Adele.
And to sort of bounce off of that, not to discredit you for being a hater, because you remember those days. I was quite the hater myself when it came to certain artists and acts. Hello, John Mayer, how you doing? But I remember you're talking about Rolling in the Deep and listening to it while in college. I was actually working at the college that summer on the grounds crew as a painter that summer, and they had the local hit station on 96.1 KISS. And this was the summer where literally everything but that song was a club, dance floor, EDM type of song. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, Jennifer Lopez is On the Floor, Britney Spears' Till the World Ends, Party Rock Anthem by LMFAO. I'm probably forgetting like 9 others. The only song that really stuck out in the traditional like R&B sense was Rolling in the Deep. And for a while, like, I was the complete opposite of you. I thought like this is like the greatest thing ever. This is one of the best pop songs I've ever heard. And afterwards, that kind of died down. I was like, okay, that was a great run, but we'll see what Adele does. And then I checked out 25. I liked that one too. And then it kind of, same thing, sort of things ebbed out. And then this album showed up, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
So, you ready to get at her?
Let's do it.
All right, so the opening track is called Strangers by Nature, and a little blurb about this track here. So this is an homage to Judy Garland, and essentially, like, Adele opens up the album with this very clear imagery of her taking flowers to the cemetery of her own heart, and right away, like, we kind of get, like, the central lyrical focus and what Adele's trying to process here through this work of art, which is a divorce at the time, and she was going through like an immense depression. And I feel like this is a nice way to open up the album in that you get that little organ laying that good underlayment. It's not too powerful or anything like that. And you have Adele singing like, very sincere lines, talking about she'll be taking flowers to the cemetery of her own heart for all of her loves in the past and the present, like basically kind of looking back on everything that went wrong in her life. Overall, like, the another area that I really digged in this opening track here is the little instrumental flourishes that occur between the verses. And then in the second verse, you get the strings that come in. Like, I felt like that was a nice touch. Overall, like, the song doesn't really pop off in any spectacular way, but for an opening track that's focused on the themes of losing love and looking back and looking inward, I feel like this was a very nice way to open up the album.
I wholeheartedly agree, and you nailed on a lot of the points that I was going to make. I agree with you. The word I used in my notes was ELO-esque, because a lot of little like splashes of the cascading synth lines that like I was just immediately reminded of a song called Telephone Line by Electric Light Orchestra, and also on top of that, the jazzy chord changes when the I wouldn't really call it a hook because the song really doesn't have one, but when Adele starts singing, strangers by nature, there seems to be almost like a old musical type of chord change progression there, very jazzy, very 50s-esque. And again, like you mentioned, this being about Judy Garland, that seems appropriate. Aside from that, I pretty much wholeheartedly agree with you. I think the lyrics do a nice job of establishing the theme. It's not a super standout-ish track, but it does, again, do a nice job of setting the table for the rest of the album.
So when you were talking about that chorus there, where strangers by nature, that was a weird moment for me. It wasn't off-putting or anything like that. It was just like, I don't know, if you're eating your eggs in the morning and you discover like a bit of that shell that was in there when you cracked it, like made its way into your mouth, and you're like, oh, well, this isn't horrible, but it's not my favorite. You gotta love that comparison, right?
I was gonna say, I don't know if I would go that harsh with it, but I understand what you're saying. Like, you feel it, it's just like, okay, I was expecting this, but there could be worse things in life. So yeah, I get what you're coming from.
Yeah. One other moment that I want to highlight off the opening track here is that in the bridge, where you have Adele singing and the strings are just swelling up, and then they cut out at the moment where Adele sings What I've Done. I mean, I feel like that's a really great moment. Linkin Park would be very proud of that moment too. But yeah, overall, like, decent enough opening track here for me. And it kind of did start to set the pace, like, at least mentally, what I was anticipating for the rest of the album for me.
Yeah, so with that being said, are you ready to move on to Easy On Me? All right, this is the second track off of the album and one of the biggest hits off of the album, as Adele pretty much just goes right to her bread and butter of a piano ballad where it's little more than just her and her voice, and it works so well. Basically, this is a lyrical pleading for forgiveness. And it clearly states that this is about some sort of breakup, or as you mentioned, the divorce. And you could hear in her voice the, sort of pleading of, I'm not ready for this, but at the same time, I need you to, be gentle with me because I've never been through anything like this before. And it's tough for someone to seek that type of consolation with someone whom with their completely ending their consolations with, and aside from the lyrical nature, which I can have you dive into, just the way her voice is on this track is so good. The way she hits the high notes of, go easy on me, baby. And then when she sort of ends the chorus with that little jazzy run that she does on the word, or not even the word, the sound E, it's just so great. And this was in my top 3 up until about maybe 50 minutes ago, because there was another track towards the latter end of the album that surpassed it, but we'll get there. But this is still a great track and deserved to be the single that it was.
I'm very curious to see how the rest of the review is going to go, because there is a track towards the end of the album that I've wrestled with tremendously in terms of my thoughts on. So we'll get to it, man. It's going to be a good review here, I can tell. So yeah, when you're talking about Adele's vocals and how they sound here, this is where I came to terms with, hey, Brian, you were a hater, pretty much on point, because you can really feel that passion in her vocals, specifically in this track alone. And I feel like the track as a whole does a great job highlighting that. And one thing I liked, and I noticed throughout this whole album, and even specifically on this song here, is how her vocals are recorded. They're very open. It's not well, I mean, not to even throw myself underneath the bus here, but how my vocals sound talking right now, my vocals are very direct. This is for a podcast, but I digress. Her vocals and her music are very open, and you can feel you're really in the room with them. So I thought that was a nice touch. So moments here, I would agree with you that this song was also in my top 3, but if it wasn't for a couple of the tracks in the middle of the album here, I would maybe put it in my top 3, and if anything, this might be a solid number 4 or 3.5, even though I can't do a 0.5% in terms of my favorite songs. But moments that I liked here, especially in the verses where she's going on with the just her lyrics and how they match up with the piano lines, where it's dun 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 dun. I felt that was a very nice moment where it's just she's leaning into the instrumentation, and it works out so well. And just even opening up the track here, how it's just with her and piano. She's singing about how there ain't gold in the river that she's been washing her hands in, and how there is hope in the water, but she can't find herself to swim. So it's almost she's having this mental block of hey, I know I need to do this specific action, and I need to dive head first into the waters of life, and really figure stuff out, but she has this block in herself that can't bring herself to do that.
Yeah, and I totally get what you mean about realizing, again, this is a very anxious song. It's a very anxious album, spoiler alert, in regards to dealing with and processing her own relationship status. And I'm right there with you as far as, considering this like a 3.5. The top 4 tracks for me on this album on any given day could very well be interchangeable, maybe with the exception of one being like the solid one and everything else just kind of like floating in between each other. But yeah, this is a really good song.
All right. You ready to move on to My Little Love?
Let's move on to My Little Love.
So, this is a very interesting song. I'm going to come out right out of the gate and say it. This is my second least favorite song off the album. And it's because I wrestled with the fact, because this song, even just to set the scene for people who are not familiar with it, it has, Adele having like, those verses about like speaking with her son, and has that smooth, like, soulful kind of vibe to it. But then you get those recorded bits of audio that she has where she's dialoguing with her child. And at first listen, when I did my detailed listening on it, I was just like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because I don't know. I don't like having it might have just, I don't know. From a moral standpoint, recording a conversation with a child, I don't know the context of how that was recorded, but if she's doing that to include in this track here, like if you want to have a track where you're like having a more direct conversation with your child and like, hey, I can't be there for you because like I'm having my own problems, I'm having big feelings, so you can do that without having those recorded bits of audio. Like, it almost felt like, I know this is going to be a reference that nobody gets, but I'm just going to say it and like, tell like my draw the comparison here. So there's a famous YouTuber, Casey Neistat. He has a brother who started a channel. I can't remember what it was exactly called. But the reason why I unsubscribed to that channel after a while is that guy posted a video detailing a fight that he had with his significant other, and it was a real fight. And like, I felt uneasy about that because I'm like, that should be a moment between you and your significant other. You shouldn't be posting a video about that. What are your thoughts about this track here?
Well, first I will start by acknowledging your concerns, which are very valid as far as the ethics of recording any type of personal conversations or putting that out on record. Because I do understand that there are, not only legal ramifications behind that, but also, moral ramifications involved as well. And I can only hope that Adele did, in fact, seek out the permission of, not just her son, but, her ex-lover in order to put that on record. That being said, I pretty much disagree with everything you said because this is my number one song on the album.
I love it, man. Okay, here we go.
And the reason is that, again, ethics aside, which I really shouldn't say, but ethics aside, I'm going to give Adele the benefit of the doubt and say that she did do all of this because I don't think she's that type of person. And what this does is, I love the production on this track. I do love that sort of gentle R&B backing that works throughout most of the song. I think the lyrics are doing a great job of showcasing Adele's sort of fragility in dealing with this part of her life where she's realizing that she has to break up with this, person who gave her the joy of a child, yet is so, now being removed, and she's struggling with all these emotions. And the ghostly effect of the background vocals on the choruses really, really hit with me as she's just sort of petting that out. And one thing that doesn't really necessarily require ethical conversation is the outro of this track, which I think really seals it, where it's just Adele herself sort of putting herself out right on record saying, I'm having a terrible day. I feel lonely. I'm not sure how to deal with any of this. She's on the verge of breaking down, and she has the gentle backing behind her. I think this is the kind of track that supersedes music and goes into what is considered art. I just really, the first time I heard this track, I was knocked out by it, and that feeling really has not waned any real bit. The only real thing I could say about it is that the ending after the vocal bit does go on a little long, but I'm willing to forgive that. I think this track is astoundingly good.
I will give you credit with your discussion about like how this song does address like the emotions that Adele was going through and like that mental block that she's having where she has to be there for that child. Maybe if I can get over the mental block of the ethical concerns that are just weighing over my brain, maybe I could appreciate the track a little bit more. I will say though, if I remove that block there, this song would not land in my bottom three. However, it would not crack my top three. So, just to tell you my thoughts on it, I feel like overall, like, it's a decent enough song. Every point that you made, especially talking about like, the background vocals at certain points, and the core, I feel like the chorus is a very nice touch, and even that outro where I like that recorded bit of audio because that's a voicemail that she left for her friend. I don't know, it's one of a couple tracks that I had a hard time wrestling with my true thoughts on it. I think I'm going to land... I'm still going to stick by my guns. It's my second least favorite track off the album, only because of that recorded bit of audio. But I can understand how it's landed in your very solid number one spot there. Is like the shining piece of Gouda cheese on the album here.
Yeah, although I will say that there were other considerations for the number one slot that we'll get to that would have easily made number one if not for a couple of nitpicks I have.
All right, so you ready to move on to Cry Your Heart Out?
Let's go.
All right, I'm going to let you lead this one off here.
So Cry Your Heart Out, the first time I listened to this song, again, coming off of the sort of hypnotizing effect that My Little Love had on me. I'm trying to think how I describe them. I have it as radio vocals, but even like an old phonograph type of like warply vocals at the start were very unsettling to me the first time I listened to it. But after repeated listens, I kind of got used to that, and I sort of understood what this track is. And what this track basically is Adele basically trying to own up to her own mistakes and trying, this is the first step trying to move on from the anxieties that she's been having throughout really the first three tracks of this album, especially the previous two. And musically, it's a lot more upbeat. It almost feels like a sort of like a ska reggae type beat, a very island-like beat going on. Kind of like something like Paul Simon's Loves Me Like a Rock vibes throughout the course of the song. I love the drums on this track. I think the vocals that Adele has mixing with the radio phonograph type vocals do kind of blend well with each other. And I think this does a great job establishing the point where, like I said, Adele's just going into this, okay, it very reminiscent of, and you'll get this reference, the Princess Carolyn Get Your Shit Together speech from BoJack Horseman. That's basically Adele's version of that on this track. Is it in my top three? No, but I think it's a solid track.
Side note, I need to rewatch BoJack Horseman because of all the references that we've made to that show in our show. It's made me want to rewatch it, but like there's enough shows coming out. The Alculate, The Bear, House of the Dragon, that's gonna at least grab my attention for the next like couple months. So You want to know the craziest thing about this track here?
What is it?
So we go from your favorite track in the last track here, and now we're at my favorite track. This is my top song off the album here. And
wow.
I know. I kind of agree. I did have the same kind of like, I don't want to say a mental struggle, but like at least a semi like, okay, how do I feel about these processed vocals that are just accompanying Adele throughout the whole track here? And I landed on the fence that I did like them a good bit. They add kind of like a nice sassy kind of flair. And the processed nature of them, I feel like it works out well enough, especially in the moments where... in the pre-chorus where Adele's fading in and out with the vocals. It's almost like she's leaning in certain phrases and she's going back and joining them. I feel like there was a nice production choice. I absolutely agree with you in terms of like the messaging of this track here, in that it's like, hey, legitimately, like, you're feeling depressed, get it all out of there and just process your grief and just keep just like one lyrical moment here that basically kind of sums up like the entire lyrical focus of the track here is in verse 2. She sings about, I created this storm, it's only fair I have to sit in its rain. I like that moment. It's a good sentiment of like, hey, like, you create, it's the old saying, hey, you made your bed, now you gotta lie in it. I love the chorus. It's a great moment. It's a fun moment. The groove on this track is really good, and it's only highlighted by Adele's ability to, like, she's not going very hard in the paint in terms of like, delivering high notes or anything like that, but she's absolutely having a great time. In the verses, she's more riding the groove, and then in the chorus, she's like, really trying to, really get into that feel. And for that reason, it landed at, I don't want to say a solid number one, but at the end of like, my processing of this album, this was my favorite track off the album.
I respect the hell out of that. And it wouldn't be in my top 3, but I could totally get that. It is a very fun track and definitely sort of a very necessary track after the sort of anxiety of Easy on Me and the darkness of My Little Love. So yeah, I agree. I think the production on this track is great. The groove is great. And I agree with you. Adele doesn't have to, hit the high notes every time. She's just playing the role and having fun with it. And it showcases in this track very well.
So, ready to go on to Oh My God?
Let's move on to Oh My God.
So, in terms of Whiplash, in terms of my personal experience with this album here, we do not get a very, like, a more plain as day, we go from the high of the album to the absolute bottom of the barrel for me. This is my least favorite track off the album.
Do tell.
So, for those of you who are mega fans of this show, first of all, thank you. Second of all, if you can recall in the Public Enemy episode, there were several moments throughout that whole album, not several moments, but a couple moments in that album where there was that little siren welly kind of noise, and it completely ruined the track for me. So in this track here, Oh My God, the production on this track ruins it for me. Like, you get that little whirly, like, noise, and like the almost like falling noise. I can't really describe it. I hope that you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it only gets muffled in the chorus, but it's painful. It's painful for me to listen to. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, and that's incredibly sad considering, like, I went out of my, I don't want to say out of my musical comfort zone with the last track, with the processed vocals, and how I was able to come to terms with them being a good musical choice. But here, it's not a good musical choice, man. But even going outside of that little squealy noise, because I don't want to keep beating that into the ground with a dead horse. This track here basically has Adele singing about wishing to let a new lover in, but her state of mind is preventing it. I feel like the hand claps are a good touch in this track here, and yeah, I don't know. It's not a solid enough song to carry it past that whirly noise for me.
I understand where you're getting from. It's not my least favorite track on the album, but it's definitely in the bottom half. My biggest complaint about it is that it's just a little bit too generic for me. The high wailings that you talk about don't bother me as much, but I understand why it would bother you. Again, this just seems so like a. This is probably honestly the most like commercial attempt by Adele to like be part of the pop scene or the modern pop scene, with maybe the exception of Send My Love to Your New Lover off 25. And I wouldn't say I hate the song. I kind of like it, but at the same time, I don't think it's like super great. You are right about it being this track where Adele is sort of... I do like what it does narratively as far as the album is concerned. You know, we go from being at the lowest of your lows on My Little Love to trying to reclaim yourself on Cry Your Heart Out to basically saying, I'm back on Oh My God. So I do like that element of it. I think the upbeat production, aside from the genericness, is okay. Greg Kurstin, I think, again, had done a great job on the likes of Cry Your Heart Out and tracks 2 through 4 on this album. So I get why you think this is, not a great track. I think it makes sense that it was a popular song. Would I go back to listen to it time and time again? Probably not. But it's not my least favorite.
I didn't know this was a popular song, man. Was this like a single or something?
I think it was a single. Let me double check that, because I know that, granted, we do have to acknowledge the elephant in the room that this was released. I don't know if this was released before Billboard changed its rules as far as what counted as a quote-unquote hit, because as we talked about a couple weeks ago with the Tortured Poets Department, that album was released and literally took up the top 14 spots on the Billboard Hot 100. It was released, only to finally 2 weeks later get dethroned by the likes of Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, a controversy that you could find more about later. But it was a single. Oh My God was a single. And chart-wise in America, it finished... Where did it finish? Was number 5 on the charts.
Oh, well, okay. Sorry. That was the most, okay, moment that I could ever give.
I love the transition from oh, interesting. Oh, no, interesting.
It was just you really could see my brain processing that information there. So a couple other things I want to note about this track here. First of all, if you've not listened to our episode of us talking about Taylor Swift, after this episode, if you're curious about the album and how we feel about it, and if you should check it out, go check out that episode. It was probably one of our most... I think it was our most intense episode in terms of what we discussed and how we tackled that album there. But one thing that I want to mention about this track here, and something that I have not brought to the table, and I'm going to try to bring a more focused approach to it for the rest of the review here, is Adele's ability to write a bridge. I feel like at some moments, the bridges here kind of are a nothing burger. They're just another verse. Some moments, the bridge does an excellent job in landing that last chorus, which is what a proper bridge should do. But here, in Oh My God, the bridge is decent enough. It's a nothing burger. It's just it's good on its own, but it doesn't highlight that last chorus. It doesn't change it up. It doesn't bring that emotional intensity to a grand finale.
I get that. Yeah. Again, this track is mostly forgettable. And again, generic pop song does what generic pop song does. It's a little surprising to see Adele do it, but again, it's not my least favorite.
All right, so the next track is Can I Get It?
The next track is Can I Get It? And this is my least favorite track off of the album.
Oh, okay. Well, tell me more.
So, the real problem I have with this track, and I'll say that it's not a terrible track, it's not wholly unlistenable, but here's my issues with it, and there are a few. The one good thing I will say about it is that it does, once again, as do all the tracks seemingly on this album, continue the narratival progression of Adele's thoughts on her own love life. You know, the last track was her saying, I'm back, and this is her shooting her shot, saying, you know, can I get my love from you? Can you give your love to me? Hey, baby, what's going on? That's the one positive of this track I could take away. Everything else kind of sucks. And the reason for it is not Adele's voice, it is the production of, for the first and only and hopefully last time in Adele's career, working with the likes of Max Martin, who co-produced this track. The first verse sounds like it's reminiscent of her old hit Rumor Has It, with like the banging of the bass drum with the acoustic guitar. Then it goes like this weird funky-ish drum thing on the pre-chorus. The chorus, being the anti-drop that it is with the acoustic guitar, does not work. The whistling does not work. It sounds very much like Flo Rida's whistle, which was a bad song. Why is Adele even getting close to that song? Why is Max Martin getting close to that song? And really the biggest problem I have with this track is it's just too all over the place. It goes from like this folkish beat to this funk beat to this acoustic thing at this biggest point of the track to this, like, again, whistly type of jam. It doesn't cohere at all. And easily is the one track off this album which I will skip most likely every single time. It's just not great.
You kind of changed my opinion about the track here. Again, it's not going to land in my bottom three. Those songs are pretty well cemented, but it wasn't in my top three. I'll let you know that. I think at one point it might have, if it wasn't for a track that's coming up here, I think relatively shortly, it might have landed in my top three, but I don't know. The moments that you specifically highlighted, I felt like they worked well towards my ears, where the anti-drop that happens, I felt like that landed pretty well, and the whistles and the post-chorus are a nice touch, but you do drive a good point here where this song tries to be a jack of all trades, but ends up being a master of none at the end of the day. Like, it might have landed a little bit better if it has a more direct approach, and I think that's why in a couple of the songs coming up here relatively soon, that when Adele has that focus, and I hate to say it, like, most artists really can't land hey, we're gonna go for this track, we're gonna go for this song, we're gonna go for this song, and all in one song. Like, we can't be all over the place. You almost always have to pick a lane and stick in it. Yeah. So excellent job kind of changing my opinion about this song here. So one moment, though, I do want to highlight here lyrically, because I feel like it's a callback to the opening verse on Easy on Me, where she's talking about, like, having the hesitancy to jump into the water. In this track here, there's a line that she sings, "Throw me to the water, I don't care how deep or shallow, because my heart can pound like thunder." And this is her saying, like, hey, before I had all these mental blocks about, like, jumping into life. Nope. Hey, just, throw me in. I don't even care what happens, because I'm ready to take it. I felt like that was a nice touch. Yeah. Other than that, like, um, here another moment that I want to highlight lyrically is we get the messaging in this track here where she's just like, hey, I'm trying to like get back into like life and love and like just get right back into it. But in the second verse, we have Adele going harder in the paint about how she's needing this person's love. But I don't know, like, I feel like if you look at the lyrics, which I'm not going to pull up I don't know, I don't really want to, but it almost seems like she's sliding back into her bad habits. And ladies and gentlemen, like, the most important thing when it comes to life and love as a whole is that if things go bad, you learn from those mistakes and you adapt. You don't just, say, F it, I'm going to do it anyway, because then you're gonna get the same result. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So, one other moment that I'm going to highlight here is... as a former, well, I don't want to say a former bari sax player. Oh God. But as a bari sax player, like hearing that bari sax in the second pre-chorus is always going to make me a happy man. But yeah, overall, like, I don't know, kind of a flying spaghetti monster of a song at the end of the day for me.
Yeah, it very much is a flying spaghetti monster of a song, which, depends on your beliefs. If you like the flying spaghetti monster and you bow down to it, hey, you might like the song. But a couple more notes on my end. I tend to understand where you're coming from with, this, again, being, catchy on the ears in some regards. Because, again, if this were, again, like the early 2010s, I feel like this would fit in very well on the radio. But, again, it just doesn't really work that well for me. Although I will say I do have a disposition to songs that just tend to go all over the place. Like, to me, one of the worst songs of all time is I'm Alright by Kenny Loggins. Just because that song just goes all over the damn place and just tries to be everything and ends up being nothing whatsoever. Another song that very much falls in that same category is Next Level by aespa that we were talking about a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago rather, on the K-pop episode. Again, I don't mind sometimes when songs change, but it has to be some sort of progression. It has to be some sort of meaning to it. If you're just throwing, again, a flying spaghetti monster at a wall hoping that it sticks, it just doesn't work well for me. So I'll make that my final piece on this song.
So the next track is I Drink Wine. And ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at my second favorite track off the album. And I think the main reason why I love this track so much, and it could easily flip-flop for that number one spot, is that, so in our last episode, we were talking about, like, especially in the track, Schmarked My Head Off, where Tade Sandville was writing a song about caring for his elderly grandmother who was going to dementia, like memory loss. Like, this song here, it embraces the feeling and the true nature of music. Not the true nature, but like one of the many beautiful things about the subject that we're talking about today as a whole, in that, hey, this is what Adele's going through. And like the lyrics here are just so universal. Like, she's going through this stuff and this applies to her, but anyone can really latch onto it, especially with lyrics like, why am I obsessing about the things I can't control? Why am I seeking approval from people that I don't even know? And speaking as somebody who makes, like, random life choices because I'm like, oh no, I want to be this person, or I want to be this person. Like, at the end of the day, no one really cares. It's like the Jurassic Park meme, like, hey everybody, this person does this. See, no one cares. um, but yeah, in here and like I don't know, like it almost seems like yes, we've had tracks previously where she's seeming to find her groove back, but this is the first track in the sequencing here that you can see that she's actually finding peace. She realizes that there is a conflict between her and the world, and she has to make like some sort of change. But overall, it's such an authentic track. It is my favorite piano ballad off the whole album. Yeah, I don't know if this got any radio play or anything like that, but it's an absolutely beautiful track for me.
Well, I can tell you that the music video that was released for it was very successful, because on my third listen, I decided to go to YouTube and just sit there and listen while taking the notes, and I saw that the video for it was just, very strong and very powerful, and I'm trying to figure 51 million views on YouTube, so it had success in that regard. As far as chart success, let me look that up really quick. It landed at number 18 on the Hot 100 and number 4 over in her native UK. So this was a very successful song, and deservedly so, because just like you, I also have it at number 2 in my top 3. Because I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I think the gospel feel on the piano works amazingly on this track. I think the lyrics are the best they are on the entire album, even more so than My Little Love. Because, again, there's that feeling of, why am I trying to be someone else when I could just be myself and accept myself for who I am? And that is not... I still put My Little Love at number 1 just for the production elements and how deep it is, but this would have easily been my number 1 because of the lyrics, because of the piano, because of just the natural feel of how the song goes. It almost feels like the Zoomer version of Piano Man almost, in a song that we can all sort of gather around and say, hey, such is life. Viva la vida. The one nitpick that drove this song down from 1 to 2 are the backup vocals. I could not get past the scratchiness and the sort of clash that the backup vocals did with Adele's main vocals, because if the vocals were more standardized or more glossy or professionalized, this easily would have been my number 1. But because of the Adele trying to do the whole radio sort of jazzy thing where the backup vocals are supposed to be like, we're just singing along, sort of like the evil step witches from Cinderella, that it didn't completely drive me away from this track, obviously, because again, it's at number 2, but I listened to it, I was like, damn it, if you just had changed this one thing, this would not only be one of the greatest songs of this generation, but it would be the number 1 song on this album. So, but yeah, not to take too much away from it, I still really, 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 really love this track.
I absolutely agree with you in terms of the background vocals as well. I did find them to be a bit off-putting, and maybe that's why I put the Cry Your Heart Out as my favorite track, and this is my second favorite track. So yeah, you were right on the head. I'm glad that we can I don't know, I feel like for most of this review, we've had different opinions, but I'm glad that we can land this is one of the tracks that we both are like, hey, yep, we agree on this track here. One moment that I want to highlight here is the bridge. So this is one of the best examples of Adele writing an effective bridge, where she's building up the feeling of the song, and it feels like a natural hit for the emotional intensity to take it up to the next level in the final chorus. It works out well. But yeah, overall, like you said, if it wasn't for the background vocals, this would honestly be another easy number one for me. But yeah, I think I'm settled on the fact of "Cry Your Heart Out" as being my number one track, and this is my second favorite track here.
Fair enough, fair enough. So, going from I Drink Wine, we are going to do some all-night parking.
And I'll take this one here because this is just a brief interlude. There's not really much to it in my opinion. So we get, I don't know, we get the feeling that this is legitimately just Adele, just like, experiencing life at night. You get that nice smoky atmosphere that has a nice piano and drum underlayment with random bits of horn throughout the track. Adele sounds decent here, but not much lyrically other than like Adele's falling in love with someone else. I mean, if we have a true nothing burger of a track here in this album, this is that nothing burger.
I'm gonna actually disagree with you on this one a little bit. If we were doing a true 1 through 12 ranking of this album, I'd probably have this at number 5. And I agree that it really isn't a whole lot to this song, but what is there is very good. It does sample. It's kind of weird how this song shaped, because it samples a song that samples a song, and the song that was twice sampled is by pianist Errol Garner, who does make a nice cameo on this. I agree the lyrics are very much a nothing burger, but they do paint a decent picture of sort of this obsessive nature of love that Adele's maybe trying to rekindle from songs like "Oh My God" or "Can I Get It?" Or maybe even with her old lover. That's, to be up for debate. But I just love how this song sounds, because my idea is that it has that slick piano, jazz piano going on there, and it also sounds like something you would hear on 90s R&B radio. You could hear this sort of in the same vein as a Destiny's Child, or SWV in a sense. It's a solid track. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll have to go back to it, but I just remember it being oh, okay, well, this is just kind of a natural maybe of a pivot moment here. I'm not sure what number it is in the track listing, but this might be just a natural hey, welcome to side B of the record here.
I don't think it would be side B because it's track 8 of 12. But then again, a lot of these last tracks are a little longer, so it could be. I don't own a vinyl, so I can't speak on that.
And neither do I. I do not own any Adele vinyl. Side note, if you want to check out my record collection, check out the show notes if you want to nerd out about what I have. So, pivoting off of All Night Parking, I want you to tell me about a song that's called Woman Like Me.
I will tell you about a song that is called Woman Like Me. This is track 9 of 12 off the album. And to me, this is a solid track. I do like the muted acoustic guitar, has a very coffee shop vibe to it. Also does carry on the late 90s, early 2000s Y2K R&B vibe of the previous track. Aside from that, I think the lyrics do a great job providing introspection into a romantic dissolve. And once again, we ask the question, is this something along the lines of her trying to acknowledge the romance she left behind at the beginning of the album, or the romance that she's leaving behind in the middle of the album? And one of my favorite lines off the entire album comes in this song where, actually I wouldn't even say it's one of my favorite lines, but it's one that definitely hits the hardest, where Adele says, "Complacency is the worst trait to have." And especially in regards to romance and, keeping things fresh, that is a strong statement to have. That's kind of what this track and a lot of the rest of the album is very much going to revolve around. Yeah, I think this is a solid track. It's not a standout track to me, but I liked it.
So this is my third favorite track off the album.
Okay.
So we've hit my top three, ladies and gentlemen. We've not hit the last of my least favorite tracks. That is coming up here relatively shortly. I mean, we only have a handful of tracks left, so I mean that's how things work, I guess. But the reason why I like it, as you said, it was a moment of introspection, but I think it's not a moment of like pure, hey, looking within yourself and being like, hey, these are the things that we gotta change. This is, at the end of the day, a diss track to her ex-lover. This is her version of, well, I wonder if how long I'm going to be able to keep this running gag up, because I did use it in the last episode. But this is Adele's version of "Idiot Wind." But so the reason why I like it so much, the track as a whole, it has a very centered focus, unlike the song that we talked about a couple tracks ago, "Can I Get It," where it was trying to be a jack of all trades, a master of none. This song knows what it's doing. It's focusing in on that, and it's embracing what it's bringing to the table. Is there any moments where Adele's really belting out lyrics? No. But like, if you really listen in, and you can hear like the passion and like the, I don't know, the absolute bitterness in Adele's vocals, like you're gonna be in for a treat. Just one moment here that I'm gonna highlight that I really did appreciate is like in the first verse, Adele's talking about, "I begged you to let me in because I only wanted to be the cure. If you don't choose to grow, we ain't ever gonna know." So like, Adele's addressing the fact that her ex-lover was a broken man before their relationship, and this man was complacent, never grew up, and there's a countless amount of like lyrics that you can read into the track here that I'm not gonna really dive in any further into, but it's basically saying, hey, this is a child that I dealt with. You didn't allow me to come into your life and change, and you're never gonna have a woman like me. The feel of the chorus is very nice. It's just a very nice feel, and like I think I said the word feel so much in this track here that if you're doing a drinking game right now, you might be a little bit sloshed. But yeah, overall, like I really do dig this track.
Yeah, I think it's a solid track too. Again, it's not a standout track to me, but you are dead on the money. It stays consistent, both lyrically and sonically. It's a very mature look, and you're right. It definitely has a bit of a bite to it in regards to it being a diss track to her ex-lover, but it doesn't bite so hard that you're just like, oh. I know what you mean, like comparing it to Idiot Wind, but Idiot Wind like left a mark, like it sank its teeth into your skin. Like this one, like just made you turn your head like, oh. But that's about it for me. So yeah, solid track.
So, you ready to move on to Hold On?
Let's move on to Hold On.
So, this is kicking off the last leg of the album here. Like, we have this song, To Be Loved and Love Is a Game, and at this point, the track lengths start to stretch out a little bit more. I think like each track is over 6 minutes in length. And this is a decent enough track here. I love the progression of it. At first, like when I was listening to it, I'm like, okay, here we go again. Here's another piano ballad. And at my brain, I was just starting to get like, I don't know. It's not a fair comparison, but Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville. Like I was just like, okay, how many more piano ballads do I have to hear from Adele? But the nice build throughout this track here, it adds a different dimension to it, and it takes it up to the next level. And just The call and response that she does in the chorus with the background vocals is a nice touch, and I do appreciate the restraint that it has in that chorus, where it doesn't explode until later on in the track. Overall, decent enough song for me.
I agree with you as far as it being decent enough. I did have an issue with the very start of the track where the echoey vocals, it depends on your speakers or depends on your threshold for, artsiness. You might appreciate that. I kind of feel it's a little not greatly produced. But after that, it does like you say, provide a solid piano ballad where I think the orchestration of the rest of the band builds up very well over the track. I think the rhythm carries the back end of the rhythm section carries the back end of the track to a nice conclusion. Aside from that, the lyrics sort of describe, having this regret over learning nothing in love. And again, I think I agree with you. It's a solid track. It's if I were to say there was a nothing burger on the entirety of this album, I would probably say this is the track that falls in that category. Maybe along with Oh My God, but I don't hate it. It's fine.
So yeah, I don't know. Like, for it being a 6-minute track length, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I kind of had the feeling starting out, like, for a different reason, because we're getting another track about, like, her battling her demons, getting self-affirmations, which, like, if this was sequenced differently, maybe I would appreciate the track a little bit more. But we've already kind of heard this before, like, especially like in songs like I Drink Wine, better songs in my opinion. But the fact that the song progresses so well, it makes it a decent enough song. It doesn't land in my bottom 3. For those of you who are keeping track, I still have one more least favorite track off the album here. This isn't it. But overall, yeah, decent enough track here. So ready to move on to Be Loved.
One more thing on Hold On, because you're talking about how this is the lyrical theme is basically sort of reiterating stuff we had already heard before. I think it does play into the narrative of the album, which again, if you're playing a drinking game and my word is narrative, I'm sorry, call a doctor. But I think it does play a nice role of saying, oh crap, here we go again. Basically saying, here we are back at the start. I've learned nothing. What the hell do I do now? Kind of like, the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round of the playoffs. Oh God, not again. What do we do now? So I slightly disagree with you on the notion of this being sort of repetitive, because I think it's meant to be repetitive, but that'll be my last thought on the track. I am ready to move on to Be Loved.
So I'm gonna let you kick this track off here.
Okay, so this track is, in a sense, sonically kind of my feelings about Hold On in reverse, because this is more of a traditional piano ballad that we're used to, and I do kind of think this is also a little on the oh God, not this again type of thing. I do think it sounds good for the most part. I think Adele's voice ebbs and flows well. Her piano playing is solid. But at the very end of the track, when she is just straining the microphone to the point where it sounds overmodulated and raspy, and it sounds like there's a knife being wedged into the throat of the microphone, that's what plunged this track to my second least favorite off the album. Because I get what she wanted to do. I get that she wanted to have this raspy sort of like pleading, wailing, I tried so hard, damn it, listen to me pleading. And she wanted to capture it through this sort of raw audio at the end, but it does not work. And it's a shame that it doesn't, because otherwise this track would have been just fine. But at the very end of the track, it just sounds it's sonically unpleasant. It sounds way I wouldn't say overproduced, underproduced is probably a better term for it. And while it could be easy to blame the co-producer of this track, the people behind the board, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your album, and you have to, make reckon with that. So, yeah, that was just another disappointing part on this album for me, and an album that had very few disappointments, honestly.
So, as weird as it sounds, I'm so glad to hear that this landed in your in your bottom tracks of the album for me, because at the start of this review, I talked about a track that I had to wrestle with my feelings on. Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at my third least favorite track off the album, and it's not for that moment that you talked about where, like, at the very end, she's just belting out her vocals. Oddly enough, like, last night, in order to, like, really solidify my thoughts about the album, I listened to the Anthony Fantano review of this album, and he really liked this track here, really praising Adele as a voice of our generation. And here's the problem that I think I might have felt I think I have with, like, some tracks off this album, and specifically this track here, which realistically, after we get done discussing this track here specifically, I will make a solid opinion change if this is my second least favorite, or if it's still going to be my third. Which, for those of you who are like, wait, what's your second least favorite? It's My Little Love. So I'm going to see if that gets bumped out. I get it. Adele has a great voice. Like, there's no question about it. If you do not have ears, that's the only excuse that you have for saying that Adele is not a great singer. It's like, she is, like, the best pop singer of this generation. No notes. But the song it drags. It drags it so much that there's not much other than Adele slowly singing lines over sparse piano chords. And I'm not one for complaining about, like, slow songs that are depressing. If you guys want to hear our thoughts about, like, that kind of music, check out our Julian Baker episode, Turn Out the Lights, because, like, Julian does that stuff a lot better, because she's able to include, like, lyrics that really can kind of sink the listener in to what she's bringing to the table. Here, it just seems like a lot of the messaging is, like, not coherent, because, like, even in the second verse, where she's talking about, like, not regretting everything, and, like, ain't it how funny, like, how, like, stuff has happened, trying to, like, lean into it, and, like, yeah, I took some bad turns that I'm owning. I'll still stand by and let the storm pass. As saying, like, hey, I'm ready to, like, just get on with it. But, oh, hey, I'll keep my my heart safe till the time feels right. Like, it doesn't seem like, it's not a very coherent message. And that kind of drags, that kind of irritates me a little bit. I feel like this is what kind of maybe holds Adele back in some sense, where maybe her songwriting is more like, hey, like, I'm a great singer, let me sing. But if, like, I don't know, I feel like the song could have been done much better. I don't know. It's just, I feel like I keep saying I don't know how I feel about this track. It's just, it kind of actually irritates me. And, ladies and gentlemen, I've actually kind of flip-flopped my least favorite tracks now. So, like, To Be Loved is my second least favorite track. My Little Love is my third least favorite track.
I get what you're saying about it dragging on. Again, if not for the production choices at the end of the track, I wouldn't mind it so much. Because, granted, if she was meandering a little bit throughout the track, which she does, and this is very much a sad track where it's basically a pity party of one, again, I wouldn't mind that so much. I would probably just dismiss it as a nothing burger. But when, again, you're salting the ears as you are at the end of the track based on production choices, it stands out in the absolute wrong way. And Adele can do this. I mean, she's had many a piano ballad where she sounded fine. We just talked about Easy on Me about an hour ago at the start of this review. Also, All I Ask off of 25, Someone Like You off 21. She can, I mean, granted, those songs had a bit more of a rhythmic pulse, and I don't think that's what Adele was trying to go for here. She didn't want this to be upbeat. She just wanted this to be raw, sad, and very much of a self-expose, which, again, I respect what she was trying to do. I just don't think it worked.
So I feel like we're done talking about To Be Loved, because I think we both are just like, screw the song, man.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the last track off the album is Love Is a Game. And, oh, thank goodness for this track, man, because, like, if To Be Loved was the last track off the album, I would be like, oh, this is a 2 out of 10. We get back into, well, I don't want to say get back into, but we get a nice retro vibe here with this track. I like how the track begins with an organ droning on as Adele's singing lines about how difficult of a person she is to love and how love in general might be the death of her. The background vocals do a good enough job here. I feel like they're a little bit sassy at points, and I feel like that's a really, really nice touch. The one moment that I did appreciate a lot is the transitions from the chorus to the next verse. Puts the listener back down gently into the next verse, but it doesn't lose the feel of that chorus there. But overall, like, in terms of a closer track here, it does this job pretty well, and it allows the listener to, like, exit the album with a nice kind of feeling.
I wholeheartedly agree, and we have run out of tracks for me to choose in my top 3, so this is my third favorite song off of the album, because it is, again, not only, like you said, is a refreshing change of pace from To Be Loved, but I love that retro feel. I love the sort of Sinatra-esque orchestration mixed with the gospel organ. I thought those were both great touches. And lyrically, I think that Adele really comes across as, being very much accepting of who she is. And realistically, it's not a great conclusion, but at the same time, it's a very honest conclusion. And you talked a lot throughout this episode about bridges. I think this is the best bridge on the entire album here, where she talks about, no amount of love can keep me satisfied. I can't keep up when I keep changing my mind. The feelings flood me to the heights of no compromise. She's basically saying, listen, no matter how many times I fall in love, I don't know if I'm ever going to be happy, which is a tragic thing to admit, but a very honest thing to admit, and I respect the hell out of that. And I think this is a very strong closer, and it's a song that really makes me miss Amy Winehouse a lot, because for as good as Adele is on this, I think this is the kind of track that Amy Winehouse would have died for. I was reminded very wholeheartedly of the closer from Back to Black, which was He Can Only Hold Her, which is probably my favorite Amy Winehouse song for the record. I got a lot of vibes from that I got on this track. I really like this track a lot, and it fits firmly in my number 3 spot. And like I said before, given the day, like the top 3, maybe 4, not easy on me. I wouldn't put that in my top spot ever. But the top 3 could very well be interchangeable for different reasons.
I think it would be an interesting debate that could have happened if we didn't lose Amy Winehouse tragically at the age of 27, of who was actually the best voice of, like, vocalist of the generation, because I do appreciate Amy Winehouse and what she brought to the table. I might have to dig back into her album Back to Black, because, like, I remember having strong feelings about that album, and I really did appreciate, like, everything that came to the table. I don't know if anyone's done a comparison of 21 to Back to Black, because I think that would be a fun little like project to do. But yeah, everything that you said, I agree with as well. I love how like throughout the whole track you get that more like, especially with how that chorus grows and becomes bigger every single time. I kind of did make this side note of like the outro has Adele basically singing that she's gonna do love all over again no matter what. And it's an interesting choice because she's been battling love in herself, so. I might be nitpicking the lyrics there a little bit because, like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, you got to learn from your mistakes if you're going to grow as a person. But I don't know. This might be more her being like, hey, no matter what, I'm just not going to give up on anything. I am who I am, and love is a game.
Yeah. And the last note I will say on that, you're talking about you've been reiterating a lot through this episode about, learning from your mistakes. And as a person, I do agree with that. But at the same time, I will admit that not learning from your mistakes can make for great art. And I think that's the point that perhaps Adele is trying to make throughout this whole album. Is it good life lessons? No. Does it make for good, solid music? Yes.
So, we did it, man.
We did it. We turned 30.
We turned 30. So I'm going to go first with my overall feelings about the album and my rating, because just like with To Be Loved, I kind of struggled with the rating here. I kind of pinballed back and forth between two. And after I get my little blurb here, I think I'll land solidly with whatever I'm feeling. So this album here as a whole, it did showcase what Adele can really bring to the table, and when she's focusing in on producing great songs like I Drink Wine, Woman Like Me, even Easy on Me, like, and even like the opening song Strangers Like Us. Like, she has the ability to use her vocal talents to really draw on the listener, and the lyrics about love, loss, and the mental depression that she battles throughout this whole album. And as much as I've nitpicked the lyrics to All Hell, like, hey, you got to learn from your mistakes. I hate to say it, ladies and gentlemen, like, when you're going through that kind of struggle in your life, it's kind of hard for you to, like, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, as they say, and, like, actually make a purposeful change. You have to hit rock bottom a couple times before you actually change. So, good on Adele for portraying herself authentically. Some tracks here don't really land for me in terms of oh my god. Still don't like how the vocals, the recorded audio bits in My Little Love are presented, and To Be Loved is an absolute drag of a song. The more and more I think about it, it actually might be my least favorite song off the album. But and it's unfair for me to compare this album to 21, because 21 is going to be Adele's best album, full stop, no notes. But overall, though, I feel like I'm going to land at a rating of... I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10.
A 6 out of 10?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, the more and more I thought about To Be Loved and how much I got irritated by it, and like, I don't know, like, Adele can produce better works, and I know I literally said it's not fair to compare it to, but at the end of the day, like, I feel like, I don't know, this album had good moments, but there was enough moments, and even your blurb about Can I Get It and how it's like a mass, it tries to be a jack of all trades but a master of none, kind of solidified my 6 out of 10. Originally I was going to give it a 7, but I think after my re-listen of it, like, I gave it a 6, and I'm sticking by that, man.
So you talk about struggling with giving this album a rating. I don't know if I've ever in the history of this show struggled as much with a rating as I have with this one. I know I struggled a little bit last week with the Hot Mulligan episode. I definitely know I struggled a little bit with the Phoebe Bridgers episode we did many moons ago, or moon songs ago. Ha ha. But I really wrestle it because you mentioned in your final arguments that this is, unfair to compare this to 21, and I don't agree with that really at all. Because I think there's two sides of me I'm struggling with on this album. Because I will agree that the execution on 21, from Rolling in the Deep all the way to Someone Like You, is better, and it more or less is a flawless album. And it doesn't really have any tracks that really drag it down at all. But on the other hand, with the exception of the singles off that album, or the bookends of that album with Rolling in the Deep or Someone Like You, there's really not a lot of interesting introspection as far as Adele's soul and love life compared to what I think she does on this album. Because what I think she provides on this album in songs like My Little Love, like I Drink Wine, on songs like you mentioned, Woman Like Me, and even Easy on Me, I think really become her most interesting works. And I think the production choices elevate a lot of the songs like All Night Parking or Love Is a Game to a height that really she hasn't achieved since Rolling in the Deep or Someone Like You. That being said, I can't also ignore the flaws of songs like To Be Loved or the aforementioned Can I Get It, because those tracks, again, are probably the weakest of Adele's career. And I have wrestled like hell trying to give this album a proper rating. And I'm just going to stick to my gut. I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10. Because compared to other albums that we've talked about, like Punisher or Bleed American or Why Would I Watch, I gotta be honest with myself. If I had to pick between this album and those, I'm picking this one. Because I do thoroughly enjoy it as a whole much more than the other ones. But again, if it weren't for, again, Can I Get It or even Oh My God or To Be Loved, this is flirting with a 10 territory. I do not exaggerate when I say that. But the flaws are unavoidable. They are inexcusable. So 8.5 is what I'm going with.
So, wow. So I gave it a 6. You gave it an 8.5. I'm curious to see if that's the biggest disparity that we've ever had in our show.
I can easily tell you right off the top of my head it's not. Because I know for a fact that both Born to Run and It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back were both 3-point discrepancies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you gave one album I gave a 10/7, and another album I gave a 9/6. So this is close, but not top.
So one final note about Adele as a whole, because when I started out this episode here, I said I was a hater. When I first got introduced to her, thanks to songs like Rolling in the Deep. But after listening to this album, people in this review here, people might think, oh, Ryan's still a hater. He doesn't care. But I would say it was thanks to this album here that I went back to 21 and realized when she's bringing fire songs to the table, like Rolling in the Deep, Someone Like You, Set Fire to the Rain, and Turning Tables, which is not even one of the... I know it's a big song off the album, but it's not the first 3 people mention in that album, but it's a big song nonetheless. I appreciate those songs so much more. So overall, as an artist and what she can bring to the table, I do like what Adele has brought with with albums like 21. I might have to check out 19, and I think the other album is 25, because I'm curious to see what they have to bring to the table. But yeah, overall, like Ryan Kearns is not a hater. And I wouldn't even say like I hate this album here. It's missing that thing that kind of can put it over the edge of being a good solid listen top to bottom for me.
Yeah. So what would be the next album you would recommend based off of 30?
So I'm gonna leave that door wide open for you because there is a very obvious album. So I kind of went off. I don't want to say on the beaten path, but there is a big R&B artist who has an album where she's talking about like struggles with love, and she brings all different kind of styles to the table. And it's a very great album, and that is Lemonade by Beyonce. So that's going to be my official recommendation. If you like 30 and you want to follow these themes where someone's experimenting, and I feel like it does a much better job, I would do Lemonade by Beyonce.
I respect that. I respect that a lot. I'm trying to figure, because I was originally because I was kind of waiting for you to drop 21 as your next recommended album based off this. But now I'm kind of wondering if I want to do that or if I want to pivot towards another album you mentioned earlier in the track, and I think I'm going to. If you like the sort of intricate classic R&B stylings of this album, I would go back to 2007. I will recommend Amy Winehouse's Back to Black, because that was very much in the same sense of old school R&B mixed with new-ish type of anxiety. So that would be my recommendation.
Look at us, man. There was an easy, obvious choice that we could have done, but we were like, no, not today. We're gonna do something that's not from this artist. So I'm proud of us, man.
Yeah, agreed.
So, Matthew, are you ready?
I am ready.
So for our next selection, I'm gonna lay the cards out on the table here. I'm gonna set the tone. So we're gonna strictly stay in the year of our Lord 2024 with our next album. We're gonna have two paths that we can go down here. Either A, we can stay down this path of like trying to stay away from like, strictly rock bands, or we can, try to go back into that realm. So for that, I'm going to present you with two options here. So I'm going to have you pick a state, and that's going to determine our next selection. So are we going to either go to Texas, or are we going to go to Washington?
Considering I'm pretty sure I know what Texas would be, I'm not ready to have that conversation yet. I'm going to Washington.
All right. I think I kind of did almost lead you to the water there. But, okay. So, that being said, our next review is going to be the newest album by the band Pearl Jam. And the album is called Dark Matter.
All right.
So, yeah, I've been listening to bands playing talk about Pearl Jam, and I've heard good things about the album, but I'm going to be honest with you, I've not listened to anything off of it yet, so we will be taking this journey together.
We will be, because I don't think I've ever listened to a Pearl Jam album in full, period, not even 10, which seems criminal, but is the truth. So I'm right there with you. I'm jumping right into this pool, eyes closed, maybe nose held. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. So, listener, if you've not listened to the new album by Pearl Jam yet, it's called Dark Matter. Please listen to that before next week's episode. That way, you are familiar with what me and Matt are going to be talking about. Yeah. So, do you have anything else to add about this episode, Adele, Pearl Jam, as a whole before we send us out? Not
really. I think I've explained quite a bit on this album, and what Adele does and does not bring to the table. Again, I feel like this was a rather dense review. Like this is probably our most dense review since Tortured Post Department, honestly. Like, I feel something after this review.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a lengthy one, too. It was a good review. I did like it. We did have a lot of good, different opinions. You've changed my opinion about a couple of different things. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm walking away from this review. I know I gave the album a 6 out of 10, but like I'm walking away with a new appreciation for what Adele could bring to the table. So, that being said, if you appreciate what me and Matt bring to the table, make sure that on that podcasting platform that you're listening to us on, give us a positive review. Subscribe, follow us on that platform. If you're listening to us on the YouTubes, like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment in the section there with how you feel about the review. If you're curious about what we have in terms of social media links, they're going to be in the episode description. And like I said, if you want to check out what I have in my record collection, my Discogs is linked there as well. But yeah, for the last time in this review about being 30 and being Adele, I am the one, the only, they're forever changing his game, Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, forever learning about life, Matthew James Durzik.
And that's the end of the episode.
Oh, come on.